Hello, I'm Ed Hazelwood, Wingspan News, reporting from Ronald Reagan National Airport in Washington, D.C. In the news today, Delta Airlines plans to increase capacity between Canada and the USA by 150% in September. Dublin-based LCC Ryanair says it's seeing a strong traffic rebound. The New Zealand-Australia travel bubble is shutting down. The A220 narrowbody jet has secured its first Russian order, and Germany establishes a space command. That and much more coming up on Wingspan News. Delta Airlines plans to increase its capacity between Canada and the U.S. by 150% in September. This is in response to the Canadian government's decision to relax border restrictions on August 9th. Canada's Public Health Agency recently said that the country's border will be open to fully vaccinated U.S. citizens and Canadian permanent residents residing in the United States beginning August 7th. Restrictions will be relaxed further on September 7th when Canada plans to open its borders to fully vaccinated travelers from all countries. Travelers to Canada will still need to complete a pre-entry COVID-19 PCR test in the initial stages of reopening. As a result of the easing at the border, Atlanta-based Delta will more than double its flights between Canada and the United States, increasing daily frequencies from 8 to 19. Large business and leisure markets such as Calgary, Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, and Winnipeg will benefit. Toronto will see the largest increase. On the U.S. side, the border is slated to remain closed to most Canadians until at least August 21st. Cathay Pacific is due to introduce its first Airbus A321neos into service in August. This as the carrier continues to gradually increase its network and capacity. Cathay has taken delivery of 4 A321neos so far. 2 more A321neos are due to be delivered in the second half of the year. The Hong Kong-based airline reported its capacity was less than 8% of pre-pandemic levels in June. And while that's tough, it was still a major improvement over May. The airline reports that 94% of its pilots and 76% of its cabin crew in Hong Kong have either booked or received their COVID-19 vaccinations. Ryanair has increased its traffic forecast following a recovery in demand for travel in May and June. Dublin-based LCC Ryanair says it is seeing a strong traffic rebound into August and September as pent-up demand is released into the market. Management expects the trend to continue into the second half of its fiscal 2022 through March of next year. The low-cost carrier group posted a $322 million net loss for the first 3 months of its financial year up to June 30th. Based on current close-in bookings, Ryanair said it now expects traffic to rise from over 5 million passengers in June to almost 9 million in July and more than 10 million in August, provided that there are no more pandemic-related setbacks in Europe. Ryanair has also taken delivery of its long-awaited Boeing 737 MAX aircraft, the first 3 of which arrived in June, with 12 set to be in the fleet for the peak of the current summer season. While it is early days and load factors have not yet recovered to pre-COVID levels, we are very pleased with the operational performance and lower fuel burn recorded on these aircraft, Ryanair stated in its fiscal Q1 release. The New Zealand government will suspend quarantine-free travel from Australia for 8 weeks, effectively halting the two-way travel bubble between the two countries. The decision was prompted by concerns about outbreaks of COVID-19 cases in Australia. Quarantine-free flights already have been suspended from some Australian states where the most infections have been recorded. In a temporary exception, New Zealand residents who are already in Australia will be given a week to return home. The suspension will be reviewed in September, the government said. The two-way travel bubble between New Zealand and Australia was launched on April 19th. Auckland Airport said 312,000 people have flown between the two countries under this arrangement. A bipartisan pair of federal lawmakers are seeking to bolster the security of cargo aircraft flight decks. It's part of an effort to address a long-standing safety loophole raised by pilots of freighter aircraft. The Cargo Flight Deck Security Act proposes to mandate installation of hardened metal flight deck doors on all existing and future planes performing all cargo operations. Since 9/11, such doors have been required for all passenger aircraft. The bill's sponsors are Representative Jesus Garcia, a Democrat, and Representative Brian Fitzpatrick, a Republican. Following 9/11, Congress mandated installation of intrusion-resistant cockpit doors on all existing and future passenger airliners. Congress did not do the same for cargo jets, reasoning the costs would outweigh the safety benefits. Labor unions argue that the lapse in security for cargo pilots is even greater when taking into account the third-party, non-crew personnel who are frequently on board cargo flights. The all-cargo airline arena continues to be identified as a significant security target in our aviation system, yet current regulatory requirements allow relatively unfettered access to the cargo flight deck during flight operations, according to the president of the Airline Pilots Association, Joe DePete. The UK government has launched a consultation to explore the introduction of mandates to require a certain percentage of fuel on board an airliner to be sustainable aviation fuel. The move comes less than 10 days after the European Commission unveiled a raft of proposals to help decarbonize aviation as part of its Fit for 55 package, including its own SAF mandate proposal. Despite being behind other European countries in terms of SAF production, the UK is looking beyond the EC's targets to potentially achieve a world-leading SAF commitment of 10% by 2030. A second consultation that takes on initial feedback from industry should be expected, the government said. Political momentum for the decarbonization of British aviation comes as the UK gears up to host the UN's delayed COP26 climate summit in Glasgow, Scotland in November. The Airbus A220 crossover narrow-body jet has secured its first Russian order. Azimuth Airlines announced at the MAX 2021 air show that it had signed a contract for 6 A220-300s with Air Lease Corporation. The A220s will dilute the carrier's all-superjet fleet. But Azimuth has also signed up to lease between 15 to 25 more superjets. Azimuth CEO Pavel Ezekhanov explained to Aviation Daily that the A220s and superjets will fly on different routes because the A220s have a larger passenger capacity. Azimuth Airlines operates out of Rostov-on-Don near the Sea of Azov. Azimuth plans to use the new type to fly from its bases in Rostov-on-Don, Krasnodar, and Mineralny Vody. In other superjet-related news, after years of trying to gain traction in the global market, the focus of the Sukhoi Superjet 100 regional jet program has shifted to the domestic Russian market. The SSJ-100's manufacturer, Irkut, and its parent company, United Aircraft Corporation, are trying to boost sales of the aircraft in Russia with government support in the form of subsidies. A new modification is also planned that will see the Superjet stripped of all foreign components. The modification will both secure the program against new Western sanctions while also allowing the aircraft to enter foreign markets affected by such sanctions. The new modification is also expected to have improved aerodynamics. The aircraft models are being wind tested at SAGI, the Central Aero Hydrodynamic Institute, located at Zukovsky. Rolls-Royce is preparing to begin ground runs of a 2.5 megawatt hybrid electric engine on a testbed in Bristol, England. The generator and the 3,000-volt power electronics system form the final key elements of Rolls-Royce's Power Generation System 1 demonstrator. It's designed to pave the way for future hybrid electric regional propulsion system development. Rolls-Royce describes it as the most powerful hybrid electric aero power and propulsion system in aerospace. PGS-1, as it is called, will be used to prove the peak generating capacity of the engine, as well as validate the digital modeling used in its development. We check in now with our correspondent, Kelly Murphy.
Kitty Hawk's Heaviside has become the fourth electric vertical takeoff and landing eVTOL aircraft to receive military flight release from the U.S. Air Force. The airworthiness approval will allow flight testing of prototypes on U.S. military bases. Under its Agility Prime program to help accelerate development of the U.S. commercial advanced air mobility industry, the Air Force has previously awarded military flight release to vehicles developed by Beta Technologies, Joby Aviation, and Lift Aircraft. Achieving military flight release is not as onerous as obtaining FAA type certification, but is a step toward approval for commercial operation and gives companies, quote, a sense of the regulatory due diligence required, according to Colonel Nathan Diller, director of the Air Force's AF Works Innovation Unit. The Heaviside H2 is a high-performance single-seat eVTOL with 8 tilting propellers on the wing and foreplane. Diller said medical evacuation and delivering first responders are two areas being looked at initially. Kelly Murphy reporting for Wingspan News.
While it works to restart production of the Dornier 328, Deutsche Aircraft has partnered with German hydropropulsion specialist H2 Fly to demonstrate a zero-emission fuel cell-powered version of the regional turboprop. The two companies have signed an MOU to convert the 328 to hydrogen electric propulsion, with the demonstrator expected to fly in 2025. The program will be supported by funding from the German government. The program is expected to validate the potential of hydrogen to deliver climate-neutral regional air travel with up to 40 seats, the partners said in a statement. The 328 demonstrator will be retrofitted with a 1.5 megawatt propulsion system using liquid hydrogen storage and low-temperature proton exchange membrane fuel cells to generate electricity to power the motor and propeller. Boeing has rolled out Norway's first P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft. This will be followed shortly by its first flight. Fully painted, the aircraft christened Vingtor after a consolidated PBY-5 Catalina that flew with a Norwegian maritime squadron in World War II. It also wears the distinctive saint markings of the 333 squadron that will operate the aircraft. Norway is buying 5 P-8s through the U.S. Foreign Military Sales Program to replace its 6 Lockheed P-3 Orions and a pair of Dassault Falcon 20 electronic warfare platforms. Crew training in conjunction with the U.S. Navy in Jacksonville, Florida, is already underway. Oslo expects to take delivery of the first aircraft in January 2022. All 5 P-8s are due to arrive before the end of 2022. Norway will take the aircraft through an operational test and evaluation program. The aim is to have them ready to take over the maritime patrol mission from the P-3s in the mid-2023. Oslo said it requires the P-8s because of emerging new threats, particularly a more aggressive Russia, which is introducing a new generation of submarines. The Canadian federal and Quebec provincial governments will jointly invest $544 million in projects at Bell, CAE, and Pratt & Whitney Canada to develop technologies supporting the electrification and decarbonization of aviation. Pratt & Whitney Canada is to work with de Havilland Aircraft of Canada to fly a hybrid electric propulsion demonstrator in 2024 based on the Dash 8-100 regional turboprop. Pratt & Whitney is targeting a 30% reduction in fuel burn and CO2 emissions compared to a modern regional turboprop airliner. Pratt & Whitney is not revealing details of the engine to be used in the Dash 8 demonstrator. Federal funding will be provided to support Bell Textron Canada's Viridis project to develop and commercialize hybrid electric helicopter technology. Details are sparse, but Viridis will build on Bell Canada's development work on the electronically distributed anti-torque system and autonomous pod transport unmanned cargo aircraft. CAE will work on Project Resilience to develop digitally immersive technologies, data analytics, and artificial intelligence for simulation and training. CAE said Project Resilience will position the company to expand into new markets such as advanced air mobility and includes investing in retrofitting its large fleet of light trainers and electric aircraft to reduce its carbon footprint. GKN Aerospace is leading a 2-year Swedish-funded research project aimed at enabling single-aisle airliners to burn carbon-free hydrogen in turbine engines. The project, known as H2Jet, is to develop technologies for hydrogen combustion engines. The H2Jet project is a companion to the UK's GKN H2 Gear project, which is developing a cryogenic liquid hydrogen fuel cell propulsion system for smaller sub-regional airliners. H2 Gear is targeted at fielding hydrogen electric propulsion systems as early as 2026. H2Jet is aiming for potential entry into service on intra-European routes in 2035. Spain's Global Via is expanding into urban air mobility through a strategic alliance with Chinese autonomous passenger and cargo air vehicle developer EHang. The agreement is part of Madrid-based Global Via's strategy to expand into future mobility services in collaboration with an ecosystem of partners. The company will focus on urban air mobility through specialized company OpenVia Air, part of its OpenVia software platform for mobility services. As electric vertical takeoff and landing eVTOL developers get closer to launching commercial services, more agreements are being struck with providers of the necessary infrastructure. EHang and Global Via will jointly study opportunities for urban and long-haul logistics and passenger services. Joby Aviation has signed a deal with U.S. parking garage operator Reef Technology to lease garage rooftops as locations for vertiports. The National Defense Industrial Association, NDIA, has launched a new think tank for emerging technologies. The Emerging Technologies Institute, as it will be known, will seek to introduce common sense recommendations for accelerating deployment of these technologies into the hands of warfighters, NDIA said. Mark Lewis, a hypersonics expert and former acting Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering, has been named Executive Director. Russian Helicopters has secured Gazprom as a launch customer for the Mi-17-1A3, the new offshore variant of the Mi-17-1 heavy transport rotorcraft. The agreement was signed at the recent MAX 2021 air show. It calls for delivery of 16 aircraft at the first stage. According to observers, the Mi-17-1A3 looks like a radical modernization of the Mi-817 family, which has been produced since the late 60s. The helicopter received a new fuselage that resembles the larger Mi-38. Blue Origin founder Jeff Bezos, 2 guests and the company's first paying passenger, took a 10-minute suborbital spaceflight on July 20th. It's the first time a crewed spacecraft made a debut flight without test pilots, test engineers, or professional astronauts aboard. Instead, strapped inside the New Shepard capsule were Bezos, his brother Mark Bezos, pioneering aviator Wally Funk, 82, and Oliver Damon, 18, who purchased the ride for an undisclosed sum. The New Shepard 16 mission followed 15 uncrewed flight tests over the last 6 years, including 3 successful demonstrations of the crew capsule escape system. While Blue Origin has professional astronauts and flight engineers on staff, the company opted to demonstrate space tourism on its human space debut, a show of confidence in the fully autonomous New Shepard system. The capsule climbed to an altitude of 351,210 feet. It provided Bezos and his crewmates with a few minutes of weightlessness and a spectacular view of Earth through the capsule's 6 large windows, each 3.5 feet tall and 2.3 feet wide. My expectations were high and they were dramatically exceeded, Bezos said after the flight. After about 3 minutes of weightlessness, the crew returned to their seats, strapped into their 5-point safety harnesses, and prepared to return for the trip to Earth. Blue Origin intends to parlay its experience operating New Shepard commercially into New Glenn orbital spaceflight services and beyond. This flight adds 4 more people to the list of humans who have flown at least 50 miles above Earth. At 82 years old, Wally Funk is now the oldest. Oliver Damon, who was on board, is now the youngest at 18 years of age. Blue Origin plans 2 more passenger flights this year, the latter of which will include a full crew of 6. Germany has established a military space command in response to the growing militarization of space. The Space Command comes under the control of the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force. It was formally established on July 13th and will operate from a facility in Kalkar in northwest Germany that already commands German and NATO air operations in northern Europe. The command's formation, following in the footsteps of other European nations, including France and the UK, is a growing reflection of Germany's increasing reliance on space for data and services. With today's formation of the Space Command, the Bundeswehr is reacting to the increasing importance of space for the functionality of our state, the prosperity of our population, and the increasing dependence of the armed forces on space-based data, services, and products, said the German defense minister. The German military does not yet have space-based capabilities of its own, but officials say the new command will lay the foundation to enable it to deploy and operate its own space systems and to protect and defend them against threats. One of the priorities is to establish a space operations center to bolster national situational awareness in the domain.
From Washington Reagan National Airport, the Boeing company recently presented to U.S. lawmakers the 8th iteration of the Eco Demonstrator program. In partnership with Alaska Airlines, Boeing will use a 737-9 MAX as a flying testbed. Since 2012, the Eco Demonstrator program has accelerated innovation by taking nearly 200 promising technologies out of the lab and testing them in the air to address challenges for the aviation industry and improve the passenger experience.
One of the primary technologies that we have on this airplane is a noise reduction technology. So we're working with the FAA in their continuous low energy emissions and noise program CLEAN to try to reduce the amount of noise that the airplane produces. It's a noise abatement material inside the engine that actually absorbs the noise before it can leave the engine.
On display are new technologies and improvements to enhance safety and support sustainability of air travel.
It's really about taking technologies and accelerating them and de-risking to the point where we can put them on the program. So the technologies that we're flying today will be removed. We'll continue to develop them, work on the next steps on getting them certified for use, and then you'll see them on our next products.
These sensors mounted in the window measure greenhouse gases during flight, with the goal of helping the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration figure out the best way to measure greenhouse gas emissions throughout the planet.
So this airplane will be in flight test almost every day between now and December. So the challenge is really to take these advanced technologies integrate them onto an airplane in a way that's safe, and demonstrate them, gather the data. The engineers will then take that data and use it to refine that technology and get it onto on our products.
The eco-demonstrator test flights are flown on a blend of petroleum-based and sustainable aviation fuel. SAF is in regular use today, reduces life cycle CO2 emissions by up to 80%, and offers the most immediate and greatest potential to reduce emissions over the next 20 to 30 years in all commercial aviation markets. In January this year, Boeing committed to make sure its commercial airplanes are capable and certified to fly on 100% SAF by 2030. For Wingspan News, this is John Champion reporting from Washington Reagan National Airport.